Right. Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. Today we'll be hosting the students of Cavendish University to talk about the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961 under the theme Uganda's unending quest for credible, free and fair elections. On the call right now, I have Charles, I have Esther, and then I have Ernest. Now, I would like to invite my speakers, of course, to introduce themselves. And of course, as the saying goes, ladies first. Esther, would you come and say hello to the speakers and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Apadet Esther. I'm a third-year law student from Cavendish University, Uganda, and I am studying law. And I am delighted and glad to be part of the people that are representing my university in this cause, and seeing that the youth are being involved in participating in airing out our views on what is our safeguarding the unending quest for a free, credible, free and fair election. Something very passionate, something is within the season, given that next year we are holding elections. So I'm really grateful. And shortly, that is me. I'm a debater. I love speaking. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther, for joining the call. We are also really delighted to have you. And now we will have Mr. Neville come in and introduce himself. Charles, please.
Thank you so much, and greetings everyone. My name is Charles Neville, and I'm a final year student at Cavendish University. I'm so glad to be given this opportunity to participate in the interface questioning the credibility of the 2026 election. As my colleague Esther said, yeah, it's really the season whereby I realize various events surrounding the elections, and I would be very, very glad and very, very appreciative to add my voice and my analysis basically what's going on in the country.
Yes, thank you so much, Neville. Now I will invite our other speaker, Ernest, to come in and introduce himself and say hello to the viewers as well.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diksoka Ernest, student of International Relations and Diplomatic Studies, semester 4, Cavendish University. I'm happy to be part of this engagement, talking about quest for credible, free and fair elections in Uganda. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Ernest. We are going to dive right into the conversation, and we will start with Neville. Neville, if you would come in, I would like you to give us a good background into this conversation under the theme Uganda's unending quest for free and credible elections. Since independence, what are the outstanding trends of elections in Uganda? What are the things that you have observed in the elections over time that keep repeating themselves from the time of independence until our very last elections, but also maybe into this election season, because we've already done most of these. Neville, please come in.
Thank you so much. So I would start by saying, if someone ever asked me to explain the elections of Uganda since 1961, I would say that's actually been a kind of a cocktail of drama and some fun events. We've been experiencing ups and downs. We've been experiencing portions or moments of perfectionism, and then others we've experienced a lot of errors or events of flop. What do I mean? Looking at the Uganda's basically election from the 1961, okay, we can have an election that is 1961 just preparing us for independence, so we can't excuse that. But actually, from independence, my opinion about the election basically, I would say that in as much as we say that we've actually realized a new trend of constitutionalism, but in Uganda, according to the events, I don't actually see constitutionalism. I see elections as just a moment or as just something ceremonial that you actually undergo each and every time. It's too predictable in a way that by the time election comes to close, we can already predict who the winner is going to be. I don't want to say any party or this, but it's become too predictable. So if I can take through the background of Uganda, basically after Uganda getting independence, we engaged through various states, realized various governments from the 1962 government that was under by Kabaka Mutesa, right? And then I realized it's over from 1966, and this was actually undemocratic. I mean, this was unconstitutional. So after we realized that and realized that in trying to patch up that gap, we hear President Milton Obote trying to devise means of having another constitutional instrument, that's the 1967 Constitution, that was actually intended or having in mind to bridge or to replace what constitution in what to his new definition of constitution. And realize him actually extending the term of the parliament. I realized other events where he declares himself as the fountain of fun and aid in states. But afterwards, realized actually lots of events that are happening, the nepotism, realized the corruption at its peak, and also that actually led to the 1971 government that was by President Uganda, right? But then with this, we don't see any form of like constitutionalism. We realize a rule by decree, because the man was holding a legal notice, and for his own reasons, he was trying to say that actually rule by decree is good for the society, because at the end of the day, it saves cost of the government that would have been wasted basically in conducting elections. But anyway, the man gets toppled, and in 1980, we realized the first ever Uganda's election since independence. But I don't want to say that actually this election was perfect, but yeah, Uganda were just preparing for the first of our kind. We didn't have experience of that, so I don't want to blame the results on anyone. So realize what happened, Dr. Milton Obote being declared the president, and then at the end of it, realized a military group going to Bush, saying that the results of the elections were actually not what was on paper, or they are actually just manufactured. They are big votes for some candidate. So Ugandans get hope and expect a new move. They actually join the man in the bush, and then expecting to have, a new thread, a new phase of rule of law, and rule of law and governance and democracy, like the promises was. So here this person, after the end of the Bush war, we see another issuance of that 1986 legal notice number 1. So the question now goes back to 1971 when we had the ruler that actually taking us by legal notice. So Ugandan, actually that's where the space of Ugandans start asking and be like, which kind of a government this is going to be? If we talk with an just of ruling us by the decree, and then we are seeing another person issuing the legal notice. But well, in his reasoning was that was just preparing to the drafting of the constitution, and then setting that into constitutionalism. Well, that came to light, and in 1992 realized the process of having the Constituent Assembly that led to the drafting of the 1995 Constitution. So after that, Uganda is set into another phase of elections. But I don't want to go more into that history, because majority of us know what happened in the 2001 elections, 2006, 2011, and 2016 and 2021. But the outstanding factor in this election is yes, there is democracy in its face, according to the definition of democracy, because the democracy is just about representation or voting by people to power their own leader that they want. And then realize that the electoral results have been declaring that particular person winning with a certain or a constitutional margin, about 50% each and everywhere. So from the outside, you can say that yes, Uganda is a democratic state, and elections have been fair and free, because realize various polling stations, tally centers declaring these tallying these percentages. At the end of the day, we get the final collection by the major tally center, that's the electoral commission. But major underlying factors actually that I can stick out, maybe any Ugandan can think about and question whether we should be able, or we shall have a credible 2026 election that we are heading to. If events like a suppression of media, because I think since 2021, Facebook has been on a ban or a suspension, and this has not been restored. But the funny part is even the government agents actually, they make posts or they talk to the world through the same Facebook that I actually look. So the question still remains, and they be like, what was the idea behind this. But anyway, that's aside. So this media suppression of opposition candidates realized that from 2001, basically, that's when President Kiza basically came up to put up resistance. Till now, we are still having the same events. Media is suppressed, opposition members are being arrested, they are being denied some rights, they are being denied access to some places at certain given period of time. And then this has not actually changed, right? And then my major highlight, I would actually refer to the recent concluded NRM primaries, because I feel like this is what shapes a picture into the kind of election that we're going to have. Because I realized various incidents basically where actually highly centers are being bombarded by military, and then declarations are made out of such kind of a coercion. And then realize even some areas where voters have been manipulated. I mean, agents have been bought money, people's agents have been bought money to give away their DRR forms of a form declaring having results of their agents just because these people are unable. But again, realize the elections tribunal of the NRM, because at the end of the day, yes, the constitution guarantees the oppressed party basically to oppressed party to question the results of the elections. But again, realize that the results that came out of the NRM elections tribunal, actually, if I'm not wrong, 99.9% were actually positive. That means that they withheld what had been declared by the electoral commission. Yet this is something that the entire world realized that there are a lot of inconsistencies in it. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that submission. I know I have cut you off in the middle, but I feel like you're preempting the rest of our discussion, and I will have nothing to ask if you continue speaking. Thank you so much. Esther, I would like to invite you to speak to us. And this and on this, Esther, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I want you to speak on the readiness of the Electoral Commission to hand us free and fair elections in 2026, considering the history that we've had, the history of a lack of a level playing field, selective application of the law, and also manipulation of elections. How ready is the Electoral Commission, the Independent Electoral Commission, to deliver free and fair elections? And how ready is it to deliver free and fair elections according to its mandate in the Constitution?
Thank you very much. I think one, to first clear the air, I don't think the Electoral Commission in and in itself is independent, given that it is part of the government, and that then necessarily means that there is a certain form of control from it. When it comes to the level of readiness, I think in regards to preparation, nominations per se, the Electoral Commission indeed is ready. But when it comes to delivering the free and fair elections, now that is where the big conversation then comes in. I think to a point, the Electoral Commission is already biased in and in itself, given that it lacks the very independence that infringes on its autonomy then to make decisions or to carry out decisions independently as a commission ought to run these free and fair elections. But even secondly, I think already the scrutiny that is coming from the public of them already foreshadowing and foreseeing what necessarily is going to come out. And from the past years, we've seen that it is bound to happen ever necessarily, that some decisions are already known. The Electoral Commission has a form of immunity, given that it serves interests of people that particularly are within government, other than generally for all individuals, is something questionable. But also, when it comes to the whole electoral process, it is something that is highly questionable on how the results that are read or declared. Given that some of these things are already corrupted, even before handing out their papers, we've seen instances where the voting papers are reached and some of them have already been ticked. So in regards to readiness, I don't think Uganda is really ready there to a point to run a free and fair election, because the system already is infringed. But even secondly, the very way we see that people are already not given autonomy during the campaign season is something that is highly questionable and doubtable. whether now when it comes to the voting process, it is something the Electoral Commission would respect. So I think for my say, I don't think the Electoral Commission in and in itself is ready to carry out a free and fair election.
Esther, before you go, as a follow-up question, yes, as a follow-up question, the Electoral Commission also has other duties under the Constitution. For example, the sensitization or civic education and voter education. What is the status of voter education, considering that all through the years, we've had less and less number of voters showing up to the polls?
I think thank you very much for that question. I think not the individuals, do not even understand what their rights are. But secondly, I think Uganda has bred a system that looks like I am only looked for to vote when there is need, or I am voting a certain candidate. The only reason as to why I'm going to show up at a polling station is to vote a candidate. But even secondly, the reason as to why there is no active engagement when it comes to the voting process is that people feel that the one vote from per se Esther is not going to change the results that are already known. That then necessarily looks like that the process in and itself is something that the people do not trust. How that then becomes detrimental is that there is no incentive for people to actively engage and go ahead and carry and exercise their voting rights. But even when it comes to civic education, people do not know their rights. People believe that they're only used to vote in people for their own interests. So now that then looks like a barter trade. If you're able to give me a 5,000 or your campaign shirt, or you're able to buy me a bottle of soda, then I think I can go and look for my voter's card, or I can go and follow up on this whole, how do I vote? But when it comes to realizing the gravity and why it is important for you to realize what your civic rights are and duties are as a citizen, it is something that individuals do not appreciate and do not understand. Now that then looks like that the Electoral Commission then has painted a picture that people are only needed or engaged to vote in candidates that are towards their best interest. But people feel on the general scale, one vote from me is not going to change the whole results. So people already are biased, and that then looks like there's no active engagement or incentive to even push forward and realize what exactly and how do I understand and participate within this electoral process. So I think that is my stand on submission. The civic education is there, but there's still a widespread of ignorance. But I think secondly, the corruption that exists within how the election is carried and how people's engagement is not something that is fully participatory, has become something that has discouraged people to pursue what their civic rights and duties are as a citizen within the electoral process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. We've had Carlton also join us, and I'll introduce him, but after Annette presents his submission. Annette, if you'd like to, if you can, please come in. I would like us to talk about state institutions and the role that they play in the different electoral processes. Annette, can you hear me? Ernest, can you hear me?
I had not muted. Sorry. Can you be able to hear me?
Ernest, I had not yet asked the question.
Okay.
I have not.
Yeah.
Yes. So the question that I have for you is around the roles that different institutions play. You've heard that over time in our elections, we've had, for example, the interference of the army in the electoral process. Where does the army get the mandate to come and participate in elections? And to what extent is this mandate constitutional? Is it allowed by law for the army to participate in elections? If so, to what extent?
Okay, thank you so much, our moderator, for today. I want to thank you for this discussion. I think this year we are presented with yet another chance as a country to participate in electing our leaders from bottom to up. In the recent, we've seen incidences of militarization during the electoral process, where we've also witnessed lack of transparency and the separation of opposition voices. This has been eminent and done by most of our security forces, and that has been the army at the help of suppressing our people and our opposition members. But yes, I understand that there is skepticism within us, the masses, but also since the process of appointment by the electoral commission itself is done by the president, and yes, we understand that this president entered the power with a gun. I believe it's been one of the ways he thinks he can ensure that the process of election is run by the military itself. However, we've seen a drawback in this election, whereby we've seen less incidences of tear gassing people and also suppressing of opposition voices by the military agencies. We've witnessed that people are wondering what's going on in this election. Why aren't we seeing the army, the police tear gassing like the way it has been? Though yesterday we saw an incident in Lila whereby one of the security officers went head on with one of the accompaniment of Mr. Bobby Wine, that is the Dan Magic, something that has been drawing rounds in the media. The army and the police, I think the army's responsibility is to protect boundaries of a country from external enemies. But once it comes to the inside of the country itself, I think that's where the police come in. Our postulation has always been that the army should engage with our aggressors from outside the country. Why is it getting involved in this kind of arrangement of democracy, elections? The army's responsibility is to ensure that our borders are safe and they are safe from harm. Now, we've seen in the past election, that is 1996, 2001, 2005, 2011, 2016, and 2021. These elections have been mired by the security atrocities, and this has lessened the participation of most of the civilians. Because once you move around the country and talk about elections, they say there is maje, there is maje, there is maje, something which is not good. So I think we should draw back. We should draw back. Parliament itself should ensure that the army works within its mandate. The executive branch should ensure that the role of the security should be within its gazetted roles. Then the judiciary should also exercise its role whenever something happens that needs judicial guidance. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ernest, for those thoughtful contributions. And now, if I could invite Carlton to please say hello to us before I can engage you in this Q&A session. Carlton, if you can hear me, please turn on your video and your audio and say hello to our viewers.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carlton Ssenyonga Mbuga, and first of all, I would like to apologize for coming in a bit late. I was engaged with something else, so I hope it's okay with you. I'm really hopeful for this engagement, and I do hope to get the most out of it. I'm sorry again for coming late. I've missed quite a lot, I believe, but I'll try to catch up as we go along. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Carlton. And you know, these things happen. We all have other engagements that we engage in. So the important thing is that you've made it for this discussion. Now, what we've talked about before was the history of elections and the dominant trends of elections in Uganda, which was given to us. Which was given to us by our first speaker, and then we also had Esther give us the role of the Electoral Commission and whether or not the Electoral Commission is ready to hold free and fair elections and their credibility. And she said they're not credible. And then we had now Ernest giving us the mandate of the army in elections in Uganda. So of course, we are going into the important gist right now, which is the role of young people. Yes? So it is predicted that there are over 5 million new voters in these 2026 elections. And one of the concerns of many Ugandans is that there is a lot of voter apathy or extreme radicalism. It's like young people are very radical, are either so radical or they are empathetic and they don't care what is going on. So in your opinion, what has caused this type of attitude towards the electoral process, but also how can we meaningfully engage new young people in the electoral process in order to participate in the most important exercise of a democracy?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. The youth in actually the global concept of it are some of the biggest numbers of population. And I believe the failures of the government are one of the reasons why the youth have turned to extremism. Actually, I'll call it. We can look at trends in Europe, Italy, France, German, the UK as well. And we can see that these trends are following up to Africa. We have the rise of the nationality platform, which has predominantly more youth engaging. We have the rise of, what's his name, in South Africa. We also have the rise of the youth in South Africa. For Uganda's concepts, I believe the failures and the disappointments that have been brought about by the previous leaders and the current leaders actually, one of the reasons why we have turned to extremism. We see people coming out to talk about turning to the struggle, turning to the bush. I will pick a gun, I'll do this and I'll do that. But again, we do see quite a number of, I would not call them elites, but are primarily educated and more selfish constraints of the youth, turning to not really engaging in the construct of elections because they do believe that it's an interplay of personalities of people. They do believe that most of the political system right now is basically a few people working together to just play the role of we have the running political system, but they don't really have the system working. The electoral process itself is not really much educated to the youth, I would say. I myself can't lie to you that I'm a registered voter. I'm actually not. And I believe there are quite a number of people who, in my age gap or in my situation, who are actually not registered voters. The more we look at it, we see trends of people not, I wouldn't say caring, but not engaging as much in the electoral process because they do believe that it is hopeless. If you turn up to the polls and you do your part, you vote, and the leader that you expect and you do see in the public view is more favored, does not actually go through, or that every time they do vote for a leader, the leader turns out to be like the past. They do just win the election, they do go into parliament, but they turn out to be another disappointment. So I do believe the youth wouldn't say exhausted. Actually, I would call it exhaustion. They have been totally exhausted by the electoral process and the electoral results of what has been happening. We can look at it from the rise of FDC during Besige's time. We did have the youth of that time coming out to support generously with the different programs that were running. We saw walk to work. So many youth got involved in that. We saw what happened, the tear gassing, the police suppression and everything. We saw again with the rise of NUP in 2021, when we had the Black November, where we saw the riots and everything. And we did see that at some point the youth did not really, they were at first supporting, but the failures of the political system and the politicians themselves that were supporting to actually protect the youth themselves, because we did see so many youth being jailed and imprisoned, and we saw so many numbers of them being left in prison. Same as for the NRM, the ruling party, and all other parties, we do see all the chaos that is happening, and we see that much of the youth, I would say, are more selfish now towards their own personal goals compared to the political goals that they would actually be looking at. We see so many people having the statement of, those people are working for themselves, and let us also work for ourselves, as they would call it. So I believe that the youth a few versions of the youth have turned to extremism because they do believe that is what is going to save them. We have had people coming out to say, oh, this previous leader was better. And even if they were not really president at that point, I recently had a conversation with a Boda guy, and was telling me how Idi Amin was the best leader Uganda's ever had. And I was like, oh, why do you believe Idi Amin was the best leader Uganda's ever had? I was like, oh, he never sold off our government property. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But what about if you engage with a few elders or people who were actually around during that time, they will come out and say, oh, Idi Amin was the worst leader Uganda's ever had. And the history books and the statistics do show that yes, Idi Amin did have the positives and he also had quite a number of negatives. And I believe right now the extremism that is happening is we are turning to these leaders who we did not really experience, and we are calling out to them as a way of showing that maybe it was better with them. The long reign of the NRM and President Museveni himself, another factor that we can look at. We see so many Ugandans blaming what's happening generally on the long reign and the failures of the government, and it's understandable. But again, we do look at the opposition itself tagging too much, I would say tagging too much of its manifesto against around the long reign of the leadership of the NRM. And I would say it has really turned a narrative against what would be a more politically engaging system. Because if every time you come out and do claim that, oh, every problem that we as a country have is reigning from this person, it does reach a point where you're like, okay, if this person does go away, what are you going to do about it? Or you yourself have been in government and parliament, because you do have special leaders who have been in parliament almost the same reign as the president himself and other reigning long-serving members of parliament and government, but they don't see the work. We have so many leaders that I would say come up for sympathy votes, and I will not mention names to support and everything. But yeah, I believe the youth, the passions of the youth that we have right now, youth extremisms, which are more determined to, I would say, look for a change by all means possible. And then we also have members of the youth who are actually not even youth alone, but the public who are more engaged with self-satisfaction. We see the high levels of corruption actually coming out of that factor alone. The fact that people are so determined to work on themselves more than they care about the country. They believe that if they do work for themselves, they don't really care about what happens to the next person. And as a social system, I don't think that would work, but I believe that's the reality that we have, that we're living in right now. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Carlton, for those strong deliberations. I'm still, coming back from my line of thoughts from where you left us. And now I understand that Mucunguzi Moses has joined the call. Moses, if you could turn on your video and your microphone and say hello to us before I pose a question to you, it would be glad. Moses? Moses, can you hear me? Well, it appears that Moses cannot hear me, and I feel like our time is fast spent considering the the amount of time that that this team takes in having conversations. So we will just hear Carlton's closing remarks and then go back and ask other speakers to also make their closing remarks before we log off at 3:10 p.m. So Carlton, come in and tell us your closing remarks, what should be done, or your recommendations, and if you want to make any appeal to the public out there.
I believe that the political system has not really failed. It's more of the education of what we're supposed to be doing as a public itself. We have so many people going after their own personal gains. We do look at it in a way that, starting from the NRM primaries, where we saw people fighting for money. They did not really go there to look for the best leaders, but they did go there to look for the person who would give them something to go back home with. I wouldn't call it a poverty driven event, because people do make money, and there are right ways to make money. But I believe everybody is looking for a quick buck. So the ecosystem, actually the government itself should look out, government and its partners should look out for ways to educate the youth, or the general public actually, in the right ways to engage politically. Extremism has no way to the future. We did see, we're historians, I believe, most of us are historians, and we have seen the effects of extremism. Every time there's extremism, it leads to hostilities and break in society, and we do believe that it will happen in Uganda at one point. We are fortunate enough that we as Ugandans are not the most hostile people, I would say. We don't really turn to hostility, and we have not yet seen that break. But if the current trends do continue going, we will see the break-ins happening. And I believe at a certain point right now, the government should work more on engaging people to find out the wrongs, to right the wrongs, to protect the peace that we have. We see so many slogans coming up whenever petitions come up, or protect the gains and better change. And we do see the mistakes and the trends, and it's all the same. So at this point, it's more of an educatory system that we should be employing as a people. We should educate ourselves more on what the right way to do everything, to engage ourselves, and to work more with people. And also, for the side of the electoral commission itself, I believe this election has been one of the most peaceful, at least so far. We've not had much of the chaos that normally happens. Yes, we've had a few incidences. There was the accident with the NOOP, of course, yes, the NOOP campaign in, was it Kamuli, when they had a few incidents with the police, run-ins with the police, directing them to go off-road and everything. And then there was one, and of course, and I want to say this as my own term. We do judge a lot as a people. we do turn to judging a lot, but at some point we should actually accept that some things are bound to happen. We're about to have change. We're about to have new leaders coming up, and we're about to have people lose and win. So we should start accepting it as a people. We should start educating ourselves more, and the government should come out more to educate people on the right way to do it. The roles of leaders. I believe we expect way too much from our leaders. We expect them to be the miracle that is changing everything, that will change everything, yet we do not know that the way everything is going to work out. So I do hope that with time and with the support from the societies that we have and the shareholders of the government, we will have change and more education, more engagement with the public, and possibly this will, at the end of the day, affect the way we vote our leaders and the way we support our leaders. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much, Carlton. And now I will invite Ernest to give us his closing remarks. And immediately after Ernest, we can have Esther, and then we can have our last speaker. Is he still on the call?
Yeah, thank you so much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much. As we conclude this discussion, I want us to remember that credible, free, and fair elections are not an event or a moment in history, but it's a process. And that process, we need to safeguard it by the strength, integrity, and independence of our government institutions. So the Electoral Commission has a role of ensuring transparency and impartiality. Then the judiciary should uphold justice and resolve of favor. And then our parliament should create laws that reflect the will of the people. And then I think our security agents should protect the sanctity of the vote, not interfering with it. So each institution should have that sacred duty, not the ruling party, not the opposition, but the constitution and to every citizen. So when these institutions work in harmony, elections become more than just ballots cast. they become expression of trust, future, hope, and democracy. So as leaders, as citizens, we should commit ourselves to building institutions which are free, fair, that matter to every voice, and not only to the powerful and those with most money. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ernest. We who were happy to hear from you. And now let's have Esther speak to us. Esther, please come in.
Okay, thank you for today. My closing remarks are that I think we all ought to be accountable and play our roles. If we are able to do that very well, then I think we are able to do the best. This then looks like what, as a citizen that is engaged in the spaces, engaged in voting, engaged in knowing what your rights. So the government to be held accountable of the measures that it takes in regards to this whole electoral process. But also, I think, instead of that is present, because if we keep on saying
Esther, we have lost you. We have lost you there.
you
I
see-
cannot hear the rest of your statement.
that
Esther, we cannot hear you. We have we have lost Esther. We have lost Esther. So if we could, Moses, can you hear? Moses, can you hear us? Moses, can you hear us? Mucunguzi, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
I'm not sure, but I would like you to maybe come in and you know, give us your take on whether or not there have been credible elections in Uganda. You can give us in the next 10 minutes if you take a long time before and then you can also give us your closing remarks regarding that. So please come in and talk to us.
It's okay. All right. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are.
All right. Please, I beg, like, you repeat the question.
Yes, I wanted you to come in and tell us whether or not there have been credible elections in Uganda.
Elections.
And what you think? Yes, and what you think? What you think should be done to ensure that there are free and credible, free, fair, and credible elections in Uganda? What you think should be done?
All right. I appreciate the opportunity given. Maybe to begin with, from my personal perspective, I do not think that we've had free and fair elections in Uganda. First of all, like we've been seeing the injustice going on, whereby the people are being tortured, people are being hit, people are being imprisoned, just because of supporting or belonging to some political group that we've seen, for instance, in 2021, where Robert Center Muchagran's supporters, were being imprisoned, some beaten just because they never supported the party that they were expected to support. They had something different, like they were supporting a different party. So we have seen Ugandans conducting elections since again independence, that was in 1962. So by the track record on their credibility defined by the international standards as free, especially when you see in the married party era, like from 2005. So we are saying the 1980 elections, for instance, like from history, that was meant to bring, I think, Idi Amin, if I'm not mistaken, that a minute. Can you hear me? Hello?
Moses, we can hear you. Please go on. Go on.
Yeah, just a minute. Let me solve my device. Like getting issues. I can't see my screen.
Yes?
Please, just a minute. Just a minute. Let me sort something here.
Oh, you want to say something?
Like I'm trying to sort something here. I'm trying to sort something out.
Oh, okay, Moses, please go ahead. I think Charles has not yet given his closing statement. So, Charles, please come in and give us your closing statement before we end the call.
All right.
Charles, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. I can hear. Can you hear me? In my closing, personally, me, I'm an empiricist by belief, so that means that I believe in objectivity. And as you have realized, actually, the elections are the progress of Uganda, basically leadership, democracy, and non-democracy. Realize one thing that there is always a table of someone having a clear laid out strategy and interest. And then around the table, there are people with no strategy, no vision, no questioning, and no rationale, right? So make think about this election, basically. This is a call up for all Ugandans. I feel it's time to embrace objectivity at this point. It's time to develop interest, to look out what we need in these leaders, because at the end of the day, realize that actually leaders have been using us, some of us as cat spouse, stooges, and others as slaves. Just because we didn't have interest, we just go for where they give us money, we just go where they don't even ask for manifesting. So this is just a call to all Ugandans. As we are heading into 2026 elections, I think that's what we should time. Let's not give up and saying that someone has already won. No, me, I still believe there is hope. And I still believe in the power of the people. I still believe in democracy. And I still believe that if people cast votes objectively, what in that leader actually has the manifesto for them, and they give them the votes, I believe that the results have to be declared, because at the end of the day, even the worst of all evils cannot have a result slate having declarations or desires or aspirations of people, and then they just throw them just for that. So my call to Ugandans to reason, question, see through the kind of leader that you want. Don't look at money, don't look at other things that don't matter. Look at the interest that you're having, look at the strategy, and look at their manifestos. Yeah, that's all in closing the wake up call that I would give to Uganda. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Charles, for that wonderful conclusion. And thank you, everyone who has been able to join the call. This was the perspective of the students of Cavendish University on Uganda's unending quest for credible, free, and fair elections, particularly the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961. I have been your host, Nancy Caroline Ayot, and I'm very excited to see you and the team come to the interface that is Thursday and Friday. And I wish you all the best luck, and I hope that you bring your A game to it. And our viewers, thanks so much. Keep the conversation going, like, subscribe, and also support the initiative to have youth voices heard. My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. Bye-bye. Have a good day.